Hey, you guys, and I hope I'm here. I hope that you're hearing me. I hope that you're getting me. Because I have to talk about something pretty serious this morning, and you see, I'm kind of amused by the seriousness of it. And I'm also dressed like Nanook of the North because while the husband has had MRSA again, he's turned out, I see, I'm so hot. And when I start hauling out the sweaters, I am cold. Hey, I'm Suzanne Tickmeyer. I used to write a column called No Longer Quivering, a place called Pathos about the religious world, about quiverful churches, non denominational evangelical churches, high demand religious organizations. Hey, Rev. And that is my jam. That is my Holy Spirit crack rock. That is everything else to me. I got out and it was a difficult task. So that's what this live stream channel is about. It is about recovery from religion. But I need to talk about that, just a hair rant about that this morning. Those of you that have started watching me because of Steven Anderson know that that's true because this has been quite some time. Okay, don't be rude in the comments. Hey, Sharon. Hey to Alabama. And these are just my opinions. Okay, I have to this morning. I got up to several people messaging me about a rumor going around. And this has been lately, it's been a whole pile of rumoring going on. So I have a confession to make. I have a serious, horrible confession to make. Oh, it's this thing here. It's this thing. Oh my gosh, it's this thing. It is this thing. Let me show you. Oh, it didn't come out. Where you could see. Hills, hills. Oh, wait a minute. Where's that other set of pills? So I need to get to the pharmacy. Yeah, there was somebody trying to say I'm hooked on drugs. I'm hooked on prescriptions. Yeah, I got a couple prescriptions out today. Actually, a lot. I was just telling a friend of mine the huge amount of drugs I have to take to get through my day because I have mastocytosis. And one of them is a low level chemotherapy drug. Some of them I have to use them on nebs. Sometimes I have to swallow them. The other day, you guys saw me goofy because my blood pressure dropped to 70 over 40 while I was live streaming, which is very inconvenient. And it bounces around a lot because of mastocytosis. I'm on drug to keep it from going too high, a drug to keep it from going too low. And today I'm on a different drug. I'm on this naproxen sodium. I don't know what they call that. Insane, whatever. And this, an ice pack for my stupid knee yet again. And so this person, Mayonnaise, I don't know what her name is and how to say it exactly. Aleve, yes, I got some Aleve and I'm not afraid to use this damn stuff. I used two of them this morning when I got up so that I can walk enough to do laundry today. That most exciting of tasks that I end up doing way damn too much of her. Not prescription strength Aleve. I do have some prescription strength painkillers, but I don't use them. I don't like drugs. And this is somebody who's had a medical marijuana prescription for asthma before. I don't like that feeling. I don't like the out of control high feeling. I didn't like the out of control high feeling of my blood pressure tanking either the other day. And that was kind of weird because that was 3 days where I was like on my back on my bed, not using this in the freezing ass cold where I was having to throw on sweater after sweater and all of that. So the only thing I can honestly say that I've actually been hooked on besides coffee and low level crap like bag bomb for when you burn yourself is uh my Holy Spirit crack rock. When I was part of my original evangelical, quiverful, semi-fundamentalist church, I was on worship team. I used to lead worship and home groups and different stuff like that. And we used to always joke about smoking the Holy Spirit crack rock. Why? Because you'd be singing, Christ in me, Christ in me. Feel this sense of deep relaxation to the point where you started to feel kind of stoned. And we used to refer to our worship that way. And I can still get in that state when I worship, and I still do worship sometimes. That's the best feeling in the whole world. There's no synthetic drug in this world that can compete with that. I only found it through my old fundamentalist church. The Methodists would freak out when I would bring it there when I was working on when I was on the worship team there because they didn't know what it was. They didn't know why I'm laying on the floor and stuff. It's my Holy Spirit crack rock. And that's one of the things that keeps me coming back to Christ is how I feel sometimes. This week, I took beach walks 2, 3 days in a row, and I'm not usually like that. Usually, I will do one every 3 or 4 days. But this week, I had the opportunity to do it a lot. And sometimes when I'm in that state where the waves are rolling in and there's nobody around, and I'm watching the hundreds of hermit crabs scuttling around, I'm watching the big dark blue crabs with the red limbs scuttle around. I'm watching the quadrumundes. I'm watching the howler monkeys and the macaws, and I'm walking, and I'm just blown away by the beauty and the relaxation that happens too. So mayonnaise, say and do your worst. Holy Spirit crack rocked. Yes. So I haven't really paid much attention to what's going on in the Anderson world, except that I'm going to say this, there are more and more people going to Pettytown, and I am in love with it. I'm not participating, but I'm watching it and just laughing because that's the other thing I love to do is I love to laugh beyond all measure. To quote Elizabeth Bennett, I dearly love to laugh. It's just one of those things. And the Anderson people who have run off, the Anderson Knights who are no more, they're bringing the jokes like I've never seen before. Saying things like NIFB is Latin for beat your wife and things like that because of all the craziness that Anderson. Somebody did Pastor Anderson's of ANAL beads the other day with him holding a rainbow colored one, and I was just like this. That is the problem when somebody is oppressive for too long, be it religion, be it politics, be it anything. It's going to bring the funny and the memes. People are just naturally going to go there with it. And I am always there for that. Sometimes, well, not even sometimes. I used to say that Mad Magazine did a good job of poking fun at all sides. And there are always things that are absolutely funny about everything in this world that you can laugh at. Even if you support that thing, you can laugh at it. Shoot, I'm the gal that walks around with this as my pencil case for my drawing pencils. Was listed up on Amazon as a Van Gogh wallet. See what it is? It's an orange cat in the background of Edward Munch's The Scream. Well, in the foreground, I should say. The painting is in the background. This I love so much. Hey, Moonchild Pink, I'm just ranting and raving this morning and mostly laughing because somebody accused me of being on drugs. And I wondered why, because the other day I had somebody come in and say that I was high on Ambien. Well, I've never taken Ambien. I don't have any clue what it does beyond the horror stories I've read. I rarely have problems falling asleep. Not going to say never because You got a situation like this where the AC is cranked on high. I'm in the bed like this, shivering, while the husband is stripped down to his underwear on top of everything and saying, "It's too hot. It's too hot." I'm like, "Oh my God, it's too cold to sleep." So there's that. And I thought it was just a random raving from an Andersonite, but apparently it's an Andersonite reading what my detractors say, which is kind of funny because when I sprayed for Patheos, there was a whole group of women that said I did not live in Costa Rica, that I was faking it from hotel rooms all over Costa Rica. I would fly, and that's really funny because there are days when I dearly wish I lived back in the U.S. Life here isn't easy. If you're an American and you're used to living American style, which isn't the best solution for everything, but it's what we do. Example, I was talking to my husband about this yesterday. I damn near got back on the plane and left when we moved here. Why? The first month? Well, we were living in Copa de Doto, which is a very rural area. It's up in the mountains, not too far from San Ysidro, which San Ysidro is up the mountain from Dominical. So it was in the middle of nowhere. And one day soon, I'm gonna have to post my video I took driving up to it because you're going up these inclines like that and going, "How does this happen? How's my car staying on the road?" Well, Copain, the first day I asked the landlord, to Mila, because Mila was her name, "I'm gonna need a hand towel, a washcloth, or a pile of washcloths, a couple of hand towels, and a top sheet for the bed," because I'd seen there were no such animals. And she said, "I don't know what you're talking about." So that first month for me was such a revelation. And it was another mind trip that I had to make that I had plenty of experience from making once I left my old religious community and I had to deal with their BS and their constant harassment of me and the things they kept saying to me and about me. For 2 years, like I said, I cried every single day. No, I wasn't on any kind of antidepressants or Xanax or anything like that, not time frame. Probably should have been because I went through this huge. Hey, from Michigan. Hey to Michigan. We're in the process of moving back to Texas. I grew up on the Texas Gulf Coast and been living in hill country. Ooh, that's going to be a change too. My sister-in-law and brother-in-law lived in hill country for ages. Of all the things to lie about, I've never considered falsely claiming to live in Central America. Sharon, neither have I. And here's what's really funny. It was funny during my religious times. It's funny now. I don't assume the worst about anybody. I had somebody that, well, they're involved in this lawsuit that this mayonnaise was obviously must be stirred up something about the lawsuit because whenever there's drama on lawsuits, there's weird liars come out of the woodworks and lie about everything under the sun. And so hill country is a different culture altogether, Leslie. I like Texas Gulf Coast culture because I'm familiar with like Biloxi. We always had a beach house in southern Alabama when I was a kid, Pensacola area, going over to Destin. And I have spent a lot of time on the Texas Gulf Coast too. I like it. In fact, I had at one time thought about moving there, except for the pollution from some of the plants in Houston was crazy. But anytime you move, even if it's from Michigan to Texas, there's going to be some cultural dislocation. My cultural dislocation from Northern Virginia near DC to a tiny village up in the mountains of Costa Rica was really hard. That first month was brutal. I cried that first month almost every day. I'd run up across something. One of which was sometimes it was silly. Like one day I came down to lunch and the landlady had mashed potato, enchiladas, mashed potatoes, french fries, and noodle salad. I try to control my blood sugar by means of a very tiny little bit of metformin, and diet and exercise, but especially the diet. I don't eat stuff that you're not supposed to eat as a diabetic. And to look at all those white starches on that plate, I was just like, what am I going to do now? That day I ate very little. But here's the thing I learned in that first month. I learned how to take the bus from our tiny little village to the next town, which was a small town. But I could walk in the grocery store and buy a couple of cans of tuna, get fruit and vegetables. I got a cutting board and a knife, and I started keeping those in our room. And when I came out and it was all starch, I would say, no, thank you. I am not hungry. And would go back in the room and have like crackers made from almonds and nuts, tuna, fruits and vegetables. She didn't serve that stuff, and it kinda blew my mind because her husband farmed avocados and apples, and I would always be going by this crates of apples in the between our door and their door and just be almost drooling because they look so good. And cultural dislocation can really trip you up. So for me, the answer was getting on that bus and going to the next small town, and then I got braver a few days after that, I'd get on the bus and go to the bigger town, where I could sit in the cafe and have my beloved coffee, sometimes a treat if my blood sugar was running low enough, and sit in the town square and read a book, go shopping, and I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed those just lazy afternoons that I would go into San Marcos or Cartago or one of the bigger cities around and just shop. One time I went to the mall. I'm not a mall person. I usually hate the mall, but I went to the mall and I was just like, "Oh, look at everything." Because it was novel from where I was. So at the end of 4 months, we moved on from Copiah to here to Tamarindo, and Tamarindo is also a small town. The difference here is I have a car. I can hop in that car and go anywhere I damn well please, and I do. I go to Liberia quite often to shop or to do different things. Go down to Santa Cruz and walk around the downtown area and buy things. I love it. And if you follow me on social media, you know that I post a lot of pictures of my crazy adventures here and the things that we've just seen and done. And I absolutely love it here now. But it took a wood. So I pray, Leslie, for you that you come to really enjoy the Texas Hill Country. There's some interesting things about it that I really enjoyed the times that I went and visited. They were actually in a town called San Marcos, well, near San Marcos. And I laughed because I was near San Marcos at that time in Costa Rica. It was just a little bit of strangeness. So that's one of the things with this type of religion that I came out of. There's only one right way to do everything according to people, but the problem is nobody can agree on what that one right way is. One of the things that one of Steven Anderson's sons, Isaac, posted was a thing that Steven had written about beating your wife years before that pretty much contradicted a great deal of the things that he talked about now when he was justifying the physical abuse of his kids and his wife. It just ran completely counter to that. And you just have to wonder sometimes if people understand the hypocrisy of what they're saying, especially if they're making crap up. And there are so many weird things about Steven Anderson, Laurie Alexander, Jill Rodriguez, the Pearl family. There's no need to make up anything because their own words come up much worse than anything else. Recently, Laura Alexander was talking about being in the homecoming court in 1975 when she was in high school back in the Mesozoic area. I was in high school then too, so and I laughed to see the pictures because she doesn't even look like the same woman, and she had a relatively normal life. And that's one thing I do know is how easy it is to slip from normal life to high demand religious organization life. Because for many years, I was kind of an atheist, a card carrying atheist, and I came out of Catholic and Episcopal background. Jeffrey Botkin and his daughters are over the top legalistic as well. Yes, they most certainly are. I like Michigan when I visit. I always wear a sweater. Um, the Botkins. Now I've dealt with them. I've written about them. Well, not recently. What am I saying? Like 4 years ago, right before I stopped writing No Longer Quivering, they threatened my friend Cindy Kuntzman. Cindy has a website with the name Under Much Grace. And she has several other ones, but that's her main one, where she talks about the warped theology of Botkinism and various things. The Botkin sisters were threatening to sue her. And poor Cindy was freaking out. I looked at it and said, Cindy, this is the most manipulative, silly letter I've seen. If they had the money for a lawsuit, they would have already brought that damn thing. This is just trying to bully you and taking down your content. And I hope that they don't bully you into that. It was pretty ridiculous. I published it on No Longer Quivering. Everybody got to see it. I grew up in the Church of Christ and always considered it very conservative. Then found out some of the others, and I just shake my head. I always thought the Catholics and the Episcopals were rather conservative. I know you're a Youper, and UP is absolutely gorgeous from what I've seen. I've not been up there. It's one of the places I on my bucket list. Did one of the Botkin sisters get married? I don't know. I haven't really kept up with the Botkins since I left No Longer Quivering. That may be another deep dive I have to do. I know that they were sitting on the shelf waiting for Daddy to pick somebody for them. And they'd written all those books about waiting for father-led courtship and they were in their 30s the last time I looked, like mid-30s, and there was nary a courtship in sight. And it's a shame because both of them are quite beautiful girls. I'm sure that somebody would have been happy to marry them somewhere, but I suspect their father used the huge questionnaire that the Duggars use. The courtship questionnaire for the Duggar girls is crazy, and all I can say is it's so long that anybody that wades through that thing must be an Iron Man wanting that daughter that strongly. So I don't know if they got married or not. I know at one point they were pushing all these online courses they were teaching. One of them was how to wear makeup and how to wait for a man and what to do and all this stuff. And I pretty much lost track of them when I quit writing. Plus, I don't think the Bodkin Sisters website, the last time I looked, it hadn't been updated. It may be updated now. I hope at least one of them got married because that would be tragedy because they were raised to believe that was their only function in life was to get married and reproduce. What happens if you were taught that that is your only option in life and then you can't do it? You can't get off the bubble because your father's controlling. What does their father expect them to do if he dies before finding a man for them? I think it really depends, Debbie. Some of these groups expect the pastor to step in at that point. Some groups expect an older brother or younger brother or mother to start negotiating for marriage. And that's what I mean when I say um, there's only one right way to do things, but everybody has their own interpretation. Because there's a lot of different interpretations of that. I find it interesting that Josh Harris has now repudiated his own book, which he wrote when he was a very naive and I don't want to say shut in, but very protected kind of guy who had zero experience in the world. It was just spouting what the parents were teaching him. What does her father expect them? Yeah. And so the Bodkin brothers, I understand they did get married. I will say this about the Pearls. Listen close. I am about to compliment them. The Pearls got their daughters married and pretty quickly, and they didn't cut off young people getting to know each other and insist only on a father-led courtship. Out there in the real world, we meet people at various places and then we marry them. I don't know if I've ever told the story of meeting my husband. It was kind of an interesting one. My mother promoted only marry rich men, and I kind of followed that to a letter. I didn't marry any rich men, but I only dated very wealthy men for a stretch of like 2 or 3 years. Money, okay. And I learned something about myself. I learned I don't care to put up with any man's BS enough to put up with the things that wealthy men the hoops they try to jump you through. I was just like, no, I'm not doing that. And as I love to say, I met my husband because I was picking something up at the 7-Eleven. You just never know. He was working for a chain of convenience stores, waiting to go into the military when we met. It's sad that people have been turned away from Christianity by abuse. Fred Phelps' son Nathan became an atheist. Yeah, I know. And I like Nathan. I've talked to him a few times, way, way back in the past. And it is sad because when people get abused and they turn away from these things, it took me a while before I could get to work and even think about going back to church again or praying or reading any Christian literature, nothing. It took me a long, long time because the hurt I had was so severe. But eventually I did turn back to God. It just took a while. It took a while to get me there. I had to heal up what was going on inside of me. And that takes time and intentionality. And sometimes it takes therapy. I did go into therapy for leaving my old group. Yeah, it rather does. It's a cyclical, weird thing you gotta do. And you can't take anybody on that journey at all. You can't. Not your spouse, not friends, not anyone, not family, no one. You have to make that sad and lonely journey through the desert by yourself until you come to see that it's not death there, it's life. There's life in the desert. And I always tell people, it's like when they tell me they're spiritual in the desert, I said, well, there's life in the desert. You just have to look for it. But it does exist. And when you take your focus off all of that and you're no longer looking at your navel and feeling sorry for yourself, and you start looking around the desert going, hey, wait a minute, this isn't as bad as I thought it was. Look at that scorpion over there. Look at this, look at that. And you start making that turn and it helps. When I was in my 20s, I almost decided I didn't want to be a Christian because of so many abusive professing Christians. Debbie, that's a real danger. I didn't come to Christianity till I was in my 30s, even though I had attended Catholic church, Episcopal church with my parents and various and sundry aunts. I like the idea of Jesus and the things he said. I just didn't care for the theology. A lot of the theology is and was toxic. So now my Christianity looks very different. It looks like looking at what Christ said and did, and looking at the other from kind of a distance, but not making that my whole personality. Instead of making my personality a whip for a fool's back, or those sort of things that others focus their entire selves on. And here's one thing that I've learned the hard way in my old faith life. People will use the worst things to justify their faith, and it is a strange thing. It always gives me scared pause when somebody says, "Well, I'm a Christian, so I don't run around raping, murdering, doing whatever." And I'm like, if you gotta if you gotta be threatened with a sky daddy to make yourself behave, you're just confess that you're a sociopath. They don't understand that to say that is actually kind of a negative confession, and it shows the state of people's hearts that they have to have a threatening being over them to behave. I don't have to have a threatening being to behave. I don't have to have a threatening being over me to be the way I am. I was thinking about this a lot yesterday because one of the things that my mother gave me when I was last there was a photo of myself. I guess it must have been Biloxi, Destin, somewhere along the Gulf Coast, and I'm maybe 2 years old, and I'm in the water to here, grinning like a fool. The beach has always been the place I feel the most comfortable and a thing I love. I love being in the water. I love everything going on there. I love the sand, the heat on the sand. I love watching all the little critters and fish and various things. I love going way, way, way out. I used to before I started having balance issues, going way, 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 way out and swimming. I used to love surfing and boogie boarding and all that stuff. Now, because of the balance, I rarely go out in the water. I'll go a little ways, but I won't go enough that I'll get knocked down by the waves because I recognize I'm in a different place in my life, but that brings new blessings with it because I can go sit on the beach. And the other day I went and sat on the beach. I went and walked up this little like it's a stream bed, but it was carved through the sand. So there's these sand canyons on either side. And it was a teeny tiny little stream. And I walked up the stream and was just watching everything until I found a log and sat down and I saw hundreds of hermit crabs come out. I don't know if it's hermit crab mating season or what was going on with them, except that it was high tide and it was high tide during a full moon. And I read that they're very active then. So I didn't come to Christ until my 30s. I went to the same church for almost 18 years. And the thing that drove me away was my husband started going to the Methodist church. And I did not understand it. I knew he wasn't happy at our old church. I knew that everybody made him feel like, lower than low. And he'd been raised Methodist. So I didn't know what it was about. I talked to him about it a couple times. I didn't get any real answers. He was going to the Methodist church and then would the early service and then would turn around and come to our church and just catch a sermon and then escort the kids and I home. So there was that. And I was showing up early for worship team. And I didn't know what was going on exactly, but he finally said, "Look, I'm going to go to the Methodist church. If you feel blessed here, stay." And the kids and I made the decision. We talked about it and said, "Well, we will stay here. If you want to go to the Methodist church, you feel that's where God's calling you, go." So he went to the Methodist church. And the weekend that this was going down, and I had been in conversations with our pastor about this because there is nothing that takes place in fundamentalist town that you don't involve your pastor in. I just wish Christians would stop telling me how to live. Jesus was less judgmental than today's so-called Christians. Exactly, Martha. Exactly. So I had been in conversation with the pastor about what this looked like. He had told me that don't worry, he was going to protect me if anybody said anything ugly or nasty to me or about me. He was going to take care of it. He was going to speak to them because I knew that this was going to cause World War III, that he was stepping out, even though I recognized that for him that was the right thing to do. The last weekend, the pastor said to me, as he's not been thinking about it, "I don't think you should be in charge of home group any longer, home Bible study. And I said, I'm fine with that. I'm so fine with that because it was a terrible thing. Every Wednesday, I would start getting anxious and would start telling myself the um, scriptures about anxiety. And I had a whole list of them that I would continually just tell myself. And this is the only time I've ever been on anything remotely like a tranquilizer. Every afternoon, every Wednesday afternoon around 5, I'd pop one because with Marcel, I have a prescription for them. I have a bottle. I almost never use them. In fact, the last time I got it filled, some idiot went through my drug bag in the car that I keep my portable nebulizer in and took them. And I was like, okay, I guess I don't need them after all. But in those days, every Wednesday, I would take one before I would go to set up everything and set up to lead worship and all of that. Because we had some people with some definite problems. I recognize now they had mental problems and shouldn't have been trying to fix it with just with Jesus. They really needed talk therapy and maybe even psychiatric drugs. But one guy was so super judgmental. And one of the things that he did that just really just was the worst thing is he would pull out his guitar. He was not a worship team or anything. And he'd written this ditty that the sermon was the chorus was, I like Jesus, Jesus likes me. And part of me wanted to laugh at that. And then his tuneless rendition of I like Jesus, Jesus likes me was just so simplistic. Now I look back at it, I think, well, his lyrics actually weren't bad, but he hadn't been asked to lead worship. He wasn't a worship team, none of that. He was just jumping in there and doing it. And it was always a problem. I dealt with his judgmentalism. I dealt with so many things with him and others there. I still remember that some of my closest friends brought their pregnant 19-year-old daughter, pregnant outside of wedlock, 8 or 9 months pregnant. She was way out there. So it wasn't, we weren't able to hide it. It wasn't, but we weren't trying to hide it. Girl's name was Shannon. We were all loving on Shannon then. I turned my back and later I found this guy in the kitchen of the clubhouse that we held our home Bible study in, kind of like a country club sort of situation. He had cornered her and was telling her what a terrible witness she was by being there, that she should be ashamed of herself, that she being around the young children of this Bible study group was showing her sin, flaunting it in the faces of the innocent. He and I had a big falling out. We had a row over that because it was like, it is not your job to get on to Shannon about what she's done or not done. It's not your job to judge her. We just want to love and support her. She's here right now, and Shannon has been an atheist since her teen years because of people like you. And part of me is really frightened right now because we have a lot of Christian nationalists out there that are promoting this very toxic view of what they think Christianity is, and they want to harm people with it. They are salivating to use it to force other people to do things that is not within their benefit. It's just going to really mess them up. And I'm watching this going, think. It's like me. Yeah, and that's very harmful what can happen. I mean, I'm frightened for this next election because of that. I'm frightened for everybody. Republicans, Democrats, Independents. I am so frightened about what's going to happen. I don't know. Some people have read scripture admonishing against causing one to feel over sorrowful. There are scriptures that say that sort of thing, and that's what's interesting to me about the scriptures is it's kind of a multi-faceted gemstone, and what you What you need is right there. But some people will twist and use scriptures in order to harm other people, and that's not right. That is never right. Never, because we don't want to do that. We're not called to harm other people. And, Jesus never shamed folks. I mean, even the woman at the well, he had his conversation with her and he didn't cut her away, call her a harlot or anything. And in that time frame, for him to talk to a woman he wasn't related to, yeah, no, they don't. That's the problem. So for him to talk to a woman he wasn't related to, that he didn't have any kind of relationship with at all, was pretty out there. I mean, I look at the stuff that Jesus did, and he was just accepting anyone. He was offending the religious people. The Pharisees in that this day are remind me of some of the people in the Christian evangelical movement of today. They really do, because they want their form followed. They don't want any grace for anybody. They don't want salvation to be a free gift. They just want to harm other people and call it religion. I was in high school during Roe v. Wade, and I saw friends being forced into bad marriages because they were pregnant. We can't go back to that. Exactly, Sharon. I came along a little bit after that, but there are a lot of people in my family that were in bad marriages because they were arranged marriages without even a pregnancy, but arranged marriages. There were some cases where someone got pregnant, the next thing you know, they get married and they're stuck in bad marriages. And no one needs to be doing that at all. The shame, the shame connected to sex just needs to go away. It's one thing I really loved about living in Europe was there was not that sense of that anywhere. And it took me a while to let go of that. And that was pre-Fundy Town. Now, after that, it was quite hard. Lori Alexander of The Transformed Wife used to say how she wanted to spank women who were exposing their bottoms by wearing thongs. That thong, the thong, thong, thong. And how it made her husband sin and all these other guys sin by looking at their bare bottoms. And I always kind of laughed at her saying that because here in Tamarindo, I've seen people go to church wearing a thong bikini bottom and a top, and all sorts of states of weird undress. And guess what? I don't pay any mind. My husband doesn't pay any mind. One day, right after Lori was ranting about bare bottoms again, my husband and I were on the beach in Tamarindo, getting ready to lay down in the sun and just enjoy soaking up the rays when a lady ran past us, a beautiful young girl wearing a thong bikini, got her surfboard, threw the surfboard down, and started doing the exercises. Those of you that don't surf, there's a series of exercises you really need to do before you get on the board. Why would that be? You want to limber up all your muscles. You want to start doing motions with your arms to loosen up your shoulders so that you can paddle into the waves quickly. There are balance things. There are things that you would do bending over. Well, she was doing those exercises and bending over in front of us, the bottom pointing straight up to the sky. And I turned to my husband and I said, "Are you sinning yet?" And just started laughing. And he looked at me and he started laughing. We both started laughing because I'd been earlier in the day ranting about Lori Alexander judging women based upon, yeah, based upon that. Unless someone slips you a roofie, no one is made to do things. I agree, Sharon, and that's one of the things that I don't like about the way that evangelical Christianity has gone. One of the things that they do all the time is they stuff on men and say, "Oh, you can't be around a man if you'll say exactly you're wearing a sleeveless top." Why? What's the reasoning? Your bra strap might slip out and get some guy. Get some guy a boner. It's like, if that's all it takes for him to get in that state, something ain't right there. I mean, something seriously is not right in the brain if just normal life excites you to that point. It makes men the weakest, whiniest, most animal-like. It treats men like they're animals. Well, I know I'm so turned on by just yeah, no, you may show some ankle. You can't show thigh, which made me laugh because the other day, newly married Jana Duggar, I forgot what her husband's last name is, had shorts on. She had thigh revealing shorts on. I was like, what? After all those lectures, your mother said that showing your thighs were a sin. She's showing her thighs. You go, girl. You do you. You know, I don't care what she wears, but I just thought it was kind of amusing to note that. Oh, yeah. And you know, it's north of those. Yep. Tisk tisk. Yes. 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 Well, if you use that metric, Christian women should never look at sausage or eat sausage or cook hot dogs or anything remotely like that because their brain might go to male organs. And so what's good for the goose is not good for the gander there, apparently, in Fundy Town. And they don't believe that women should ever get sexually excited or experience sexual desire in any way, shape, or form. I'm so happy for Jenna. She looks so happy now. Martha, same. That's all I ever wanted for her was to escape being her parents' second in command because that had to have been miserable. Being grown and living in the same room with all those teeny tiny little girls. I can't imagine how that worked. It is sinful according to them. Personally, I don't believe any of that. But it took me a long, 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 long. Yeah, I know. Took me a long, 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 long time to get there. And I'm so glad I did. And that goes back to thought control again. You have to do that. When you leave these places, you have to take every thought captive, but not in the way they think. Like looking at a girl on the beach dressed like that, thinking, oh, she's this slimy, slimy slut. And it's like, no, that's judgmental. That's what they tell you at that old church. Truth of the matter is, she is perfectly beautiful and perfectly dressed. She wants to dress like that. Bless her. That is her. And she looks so pretty. So cute. Who am I to judge if that's the wrong thing for her? Jenna is my neighbor. Oh, wow. Titus too. And her new last name was Weissman. I think yeah, I'd heard about that she had gotten married, but I didn't pay much attention to it because I'm not hardly writing about this stuff anymore. But I may have to. I'm hoping that she has the happiest life possible. That's the best thing you can do. The best revenge you can have is to have a happy life, is what I've discovered, in or out. First Corinthians 7 refutes the Duggar teaching that intimacy is only for the man's pleasure. My church friends work for his dad. Oh, wow. But that's such a pervasive thing. Man's pleasure only through this sort of thing. When I used to write about, okay, thanks. That would be awesome. The one that used to make me laugh was I've heard that about Steven. I heard he's a good guy. Lori Alexander, every time she would post about sex and every time I would write something about why her views on sex were not good and that female pleasure was a thing, any what time anybody said anything about sex being pleasurable for the woman in the comments, Lori's followers would come downvote and would turn around and report all of the things being said. They reported me a number of times. And you know, when you're moderating and your moderation box is full of your own comments that are perfectly fine, it just gets annoying. So I finally had to set it where they could not flag my comments as inappropriate. as a moderator. One thing I love about being Jewish is that the lady's pleasure comes first. I know that. I have several Jewish friends who we've talked about that in great detail. The woman is for the man as the man is for the woman. Exactly. So happy wife, happy life, and all of that. And I can't, I just can't with Lori Alexander's 5 minutes in the lube. She talks about that a fair amount. And it's like, girl, tell me you've never had an orgasm without saying I've never had an orgasm. 5 minutes of lube is it. Denying your husband sexual pleasure all that time. And then when you decide to be submissive and start doing it, it is 5 minutes in lube. It's just another chore. She likened it to a chore like taking out the trash. Started thinking about it. I was like, how is her husband letting her say these things? For me, I would be livid. I would be like, why are you dogging me in that way? Why are you throwing shade? Because the things you're saying shows that he's not good in bed. He didn't care about her in that fashion. I'm down with not denying my husband if I ever get married. I think it's a good idea not to deny anybody too much on either side, and it happens. So she just lays there and lets his sweat drip. That's sick. Yeah, I know it is. Lay back and think of England. That's what they used to say in the Victorian marriage manuals. I think that came from Queen Victoria. I was reading. She told one of her daughters that. Harsh, legalistic preacher. Jason Cooley, agree with Laura Alexander blogs. Debbie, that's one of the scary things. There are so many toxic male preachers that jump on the Lori Love train. I think the worst one that I've ever seen that just always icked me out whenever I would read his advice, and then he put together a sex site, was everyone's favorite silly hairy man, Larry Solomon, and his blogs. He was just like biblical gender roles was the name of the original thing he did. And then he did a sex one, and it was just like horrific. Every time I read the advice, it was like, no, we're not supposed to have polygamous marriages. No, we're not supposed to do that. No, the wife is not supposed to submit every single time. Victorians were prolific writers at erotica. I know that. The oyster and the pearl sounds like they were all about learning how to have so much fun in that regard. I think it was mostly just Victoria and some other prudes that were saying that stuff. Biblical gender started advocating withholding medicine to keep people in line, keep women in line, and withholding any kind of funds for the household, food, and various other things. And it was just like, do you not understand that's like the definition of abuse? It used to blow my mind. He can be kind. I have a friend that catfished him for like a year and a half, and he was very kind to her. But we just kind of laughed because she made up the most ridiculous story and he bought it. The bar is literally in hell, but it's better than the electrical cord. Oh my goodness, it is better than the electrical cord. Say this about Larry. I'm going to compliment Larry. Larry never pulled out the electrical cord and used it on either of his wives, as far as I can tell. Stephen, not so much. And that to me was the shocker when the kids started coming out of the closet and talking about their childhood. Because I always thought that at least Susanna was a good parent. Maybe Stephen too. The kids always looked healthy and normal, but you can get fooled so hard, is what I've learned. People in that group, especially, and in any kind of like Christian nationalism type groups, or if we're talking about fundamentalism like Laurie Alexander and the Pearls, they can keep the facade in place, but only so long. older kids' statements broke my heart. Mine as well. I had to listen to Miriam's testimony or anytime she speaks in small pieces because I can't listen to it. If I listen to it in one sitting, it's just too much. It's just heartbreaking. I can't imagine treating your daughter like that. I can't imagine treating a son like that. And destroyed any respectability I had towards Zoo and Steve. I only had it towards her. I never had it against towards him because he had said so many things where he was calling for the death of this one and that one and things. And I would watch Stephen's sermon sometimes and laugh because he did have a wicked sense of humor and would sometimes really bust some funny moves. But his talking about the deaths of others used to just freak me out. I just can't handle that. Wish I could fix their situation because all they want is for their parents to love them. And the sad thing is you can't force anybody to love you. Either they do or they don't. And that's the sad and tragic truth, especially when it's a parent. I mean, just can't. And the Todd Ferguson situation, that just blew my mind because I knew Todd. I talked to Todd on the phone a number of times. That was really, really bad. I think JS may have been involved, just my opinion. I believe, no, I believe several of them were involved in that. I believe it originated in that home. They do look theatrical. The thing about it is, Todd Ferguson was a very kind man that would give you the shirt off his back if you needed it. He was. He was really sweet. Now, we didn't agree on religion because he was still following the IFB and some of the more fundamentalist type Baptists. And I'm not down with that at all. But we had respect for each other. He was good people. And you don't have to agree with anyone's religion to believe they're good people. That was one reason why I would sometimes talk to these guys. I talked to, here's a blast from the past, Von Ullman. And at times I thought Von was probably an okay guy until I read the book he wrote about courtship and some of his things about trying to make money by selling courtship seminars and things. You teenagers don't need to get married. I don't care what he said on that. They just don't. They're not mature enough for it, and you're just dooming them to failure when you do that. For several years, Miriam had looked very sad in family photos, but I thought it was because she was a junior mom. Same. I thought the same thing. I thought when you see somebody that looks sad and hairy in those groups, that they're having to pull all the emotional weight and do all the labor. That's really what I thought was going on. Kimmy Gessler, minor daughter Emily, is engaged. Oh, is she? I hope she manages to get out and get straight. Timothy Rodriguez got married recently, and his wife's family has pretty much put paid to some of the horrible stuff Jill Rodriguez herself was doing as far as exploiting the kids. Life is definitely more complex than it used to be for a lot of people. It's not for me. My life is probably simpler than it's ever been, and I'm enjoying that. I've had complicated. I've had complex. I don't want to go back to that. I'm enjoying myself here. Speaking of which, the husband just returned, so I'm probably going to have to go make like a wife. Okay, you guys, thank you for showing up. Thank you for bearing with me while I had to straighten out the rumor that I'm a pill popping addict, a reformed addict. Again, if somebody tries to tell you that, the thing I'm recovered from is fundamentalist evangelical religion, not drugs. Drugs have never been my problem, which is probably good. The coverettes are as bought in as GLP. At least the coverettes feed people. Nobody is being starved that I can tell. And the Rodriguez says, I'm not so sure that that's what's going on or not. Love you guys. Take care.